All right, I'll try to make this fast, 5 to 10 minutes max. I'm going to give it a quick overview of the new features in PowerHuntShares. At a high level, we did a facelift with a few fun things to allow you to open up some space. You can collapse all the menus, some basic stuff there. Obviously, there's been a color change to kind of match some of the NetSPI colors since then, and quick links to both NetSPI as well as the PowerHuntShares GitHub repo. The dashboard has a lot of new features and new data. You have the ability to look at all of the excessive share permissions. And they are ranked by low, medium, high, and critical risk. It kind of shows those in a bar chart by default, but you do have the ability to see the other affected assets. So in this case, we have 13 permissions that are hosted on 7 shares, that are hosted on 2 computers, that are living on 1 subnet, right? So you have that ability to really kind of trace back the volume of assets that are affected for each type, which is nice. We also started collecting interesting files and inventorying those for searching. And when we can find configuration files that we know about, we can go ahead and parse those for credentials. So in this case, you can see there's 83 found. None of them had sensitive data, or we don't think there are. There are 53 files that might have secrets or passwords stored in them, and we were able to actually extract 143 credentials from 50 of them. So pretty neat. Another thing to mention is all of these now support saving images or exporting the data via CSV, which is nice. These all use a library called Apex Charts.js, which is open source and free. Highly recommend checking that out. I've really enjoyed using that. Also, though, we have asset exposure summary here, so it kind of just speaks about the volumes of each type overall. And if you are enabling LLMs, which is a new feature this release, you can have that go ahead and classify the applications it sees, talk about what their categories are, kind of what they're intended to do, and then speak to which ones are most prevalent in your environment. So that's pretty neat. If you don't enable the LLM capability, that's totally fine. This paragraph just won't be included in the draft. Next, we have peer comparison. I spent a lot of time going back and looking at what's normal and benchmarking what people have in their environment. And that allows us to kind of compare your environment after the scan to kind of what's normal, more or less. And I know that will be subject to data drift over time, but at least it gives you a pulse for how you compare to most environments. Next, we have share creation timeline. This is my second attempt to try to illustrate how shares have been introduced into the environment over time and what level of risk has been introduced over time. So the bar chart pieces here are when the charts have been, when the shares have been introduced, and the lines here represent the critical and high risk and how long they've been in the environment. I also added a couple metrics like the average number of shares and then some anomaly detection based on standard deviation here. You can read more offline or in the blog, but for now, that's what that is. And all of this you can zoom into to get more info if you want. Once again, that is a Apex Charts library. Lastly, we have remediation and prioritization, right? So there are a number of methods to reduce the amount of tasks that are required when you go to remediate all of these. Some environments have thousands and thousands of shares that need to be remediated or permissions that need to be remediated. And so if you do them one at a time, it can take a long time. If you can naturally group them by folder group or by share name that have high similarity, it can go a long way to saving you time and effort, right? All the way, in this particular lab environment, up to 83%. We've seen in real clients and environments up to 90% time savings. So pretty useful. There's a few new sections we added here. Networks is one of them. I have started to clean this up a little bit. If you have multiple networks, you'll be able to search through them and kind of get a vibe for what level of exposure you have and what the volume of exposure is. Computers, we did some upgrades so you can see the risk level as well as their general exposure. And the operating system we added this round, you can dig into these to understand what types of interesting files are exposed. So that's kind of neat. And if you don't know what these things mean, I did put in tooltips for all of you, readers out there. Next, we made some upgrades to the share names section. Once again, we have a new risk table, but we now have new filtering, sorting, etc. So if we collapse this a little bit, we'll clear the search, and I'll collapse a few of these. We can come in and we can filter And the filter applies to all the fields, just as, so you know, it's not just the name, but it's still quite nice. I also have some quick filters, so you can filter for things that we know are remotely exploitable that could lead to code execution, things that have write, shares that have interesting files you might want to go after, etc. So all of these can be very handy, and the export function allows you to export the UNC path, so you can use those in other tools. All of these also can be expanded, so you can get a guess as to what applications are being used when they were introduced into the environment, what percentage of the environment they represent and who owns them, and dig into the risk ratings, share ratings, folder groups, all the things. So super handy. Folder groups, once again, we added risk levels for insight, and that LLM fingerprinting comes back into play for generating the related app lists. I do have a static library of about 80 apps that is included in that as well. That will happen by default, but if you enable the LLM capability by adding your API key and endpoint when you run the tool, you will get more accurate results and more complete results. Insecure ACEs is another new section this round. Speaks to the number of individual access control entries that have been identified as excessive. You can see their risk rating here, and then their type. So these are dynamically generated based on the environment, so you can get a feel for what type of privileges are being assigned and which ones are most prevalent, and you can dig into those more here, which is nice. I did an overhaul to identities as well, give you an idea of what users are in the environment, if they're owners, if they can access shares, and what level of risk shares can they access. I'll try to improve this over time, but this was kind of a first shot. If we go back here, this is our actual graph page. So everybody loves a graph. I'm no exception. And while this isn't Bloodhound, it is fun for kind of exploring different nodes. There's some basic functionality in here, so we can do quick searches based on node and edge names. We can right-click and dig into some of the details around these if we want to view them. Very, very alpha mode. If we reset this again, we can also choose a source. I'm just going to choose these arbitrarily, destinations, and find the shortest path between them. This is not, once again, it does not have the fidelity of Bloodhound. This is more exploratory, so the relationships between them may or may not be fully exploitable, but they do show, some connection between them. So just keep that in mind when you're playing with it, which is good. Let's go ahead and reset all of these again. From here, we also have layout options. If you want to try to change these into views that more fit your use case or the message you're trying to share. I'm a big fan of breadth first. You can select these to kind of show immediate access. You can continue to expand the nodes to try to tell your story, whatever that story happens to be. Let me get this a little bit in frame here, which is fine. Oh, I guess that does go there. Either way, you kind of get the general vibe. If you want to get rid of some of the background images, we also have a lot of kind of cleanup options, so you can show just the things that you care about, and maybe you want to just enable nodes, and then zoom in a little bit, and from here you want to then save your image, which is great. So whatever you happen to want to do, hopefully it's flexible enough to support that. You also have some line options that you can tweak as well as you go. So hopefully that's enough for now. The thing that a lot of people are interested in are the interested files that we talked about. There's over 200. I think I mentioned that earlier. In here, you can filter for the things that matter to you. So like backup in this case. And you can drill into the UNC paths where they are, or export the UNC paths for your filter. So if I type admin, I'm going to get a list of everything that has admin either in the path or in one of the subcategories. And I can export that list and get the UNC paths to use other places. I can also click these to filter by category, but use it how you want to use it. The pen test team said they also wanted the ability to automatically extract passwords from known configuration files. So we do support 50 configuration files right now that we automatically extract from. Same idea here. We have all the filtering capabilities and the ability to extract. When I am able to pull the details, I will. So for example, with web.config, let's see if I have one of these in here. We should be able to pull a bunch of additional information, right? So web config, we get the file path, we understand the user, the password that was extracted, and then some of the additional information we try to pull. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction, hopefully. And then the other sections are no different than they were before. They just got new shiny icons. So that is it. Anyways, that's the whole overview in 10-minute shotgun. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you have questions, please reach out on Twitter. I am @_nullbind on Twitter/X, or submit pull requests or issues to the GitHub project. I'd be happy to take a look at those and try to make changes as we can. Thanks.